Hey everyone, welcome out to I think this is gonna be episode 151, maybe 152, depending on my other my other episode that I'm also recording like tomorrow, which will have a guest slash interview on it. So I'm not sure which one of these is gonna come out first. We'll find out. Um, so yeah, probably just depends. I'm actually gonna put the other one. I'll probably put the other one out as a special episode. So this will be 151. Um, so it's October, obviously. I'm doing the Halloween spiel, I'm doing the horror, the creepy month, episodes. My favorite time of the year. Uh, even though I watch horror all year round, and you know, I always got my Toonie Terrors up and this and that, but it's like, man, I just like to talk about stuff. And it's funny, after doing this for like 4 years, I went back and was checking out some of my older episodes because sometimes I forget what I've already covered. And it's funny to me that it's going to take me this long to do this, but this is a Stephen King episode. Um, More for the movies. I will dabble in some of my favorite books because I do have almost just about, I do believe, every Stephen King book. Just about. Um, and I've read a majority of them. It's it's no secret that I am a big fan of Stephen King. It is no secret that I like books, not just manga and comic books, actually like novels and novellas and stuff like that. And Stephen King, uh, I don't think I would have ever gotten into the books, like the movies, yes, because I've gone out when I did the anthology episode talking about different like horror anthologies. Um, I talked about Creepshow 2 and Creepshow and how, so it's like, obviously I would have checked out Stephen King stuff regardless, like The Shining and everything. But from a book standpoint, it was a gateway for me. And I am going to be brushing up on this in a different episode. I started off, as a kid, getting my allowance for, doing chores around, the house and outside, mowing the lawn, picking up sticks around the farm so they could mow when I wasn't big enough to actually mow, stuff like that. And I would get this little scholastic paper every so often in school, and I'd check off, books that I want. And I used to get goosebumps. See where I'm going with this? And that was my gateway into other styles of horror. I got into Stephen King from that, and H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, and then I remember this one book, and I wish I could find it. I know I have it somewhere called what was it called? It was a devil something, and I wish I could find the book. I know I have it somewhere. I know I don't have it here. It's probably back home. I got it at like a tag sale. I should not have read this book at that age, but it was like cranking up freaking Stephen King to like 200 miles per hour, and just it was, poof, yeah. But something like this right here, Goosebumps. That's This is what got me into Stephen King, and I can't wait to do a whole episode talking about Stephen King stuff. And by the way, in case you're wondering, that was not out for this. That was actually out for the other episode that I'm doing. So I was like, oh, what a convenience. I can use this as a prop for more than one episode. Yay, recycling content. That's what I do. Now, obviously, before we get into all the Stephen King goodness of films and books and all that good jazz, uh, stuff that's going on with me recently. You know, for like comic books, I haven't gone to the comic book shop. I've been so busy with work, and I'm watching a lot of horror movies. I just finally um, watched, because I got it on Amazon Prime, was Talk to Me. And after all the people like hyping it up, saying you got to watch Talk to Me, it's good, it's one of the good best movies, like horror movies we've seen this year. You're gonna like it. You're gonna like it a lot. And I'm like, am I though? Am I gonna like it? How much am I gonna really like this? Huh? But then I watched it and I was like, okay, this is real. Like, it was really good. I was genuinely surprised because, like, watching the trailers and then seeing it, it's like, I don't want to say it's a swerve or false advertisement, but the trailers didn't do it justice, and the trailers were good, mind you. So I was like, all right, you know what? This is good. I liked it. Um, I rented it, but I think I'm probably gonna pick up a physical release of it because I still I'm still on the whole preserving physical media kick, especially with the announcements that I heard that like Best Buy is possibly going to be doing away with physical media starting the end of quarter 1 next year. And I was like, you're about to get rid of physical media? Like, no, no, no. So I think once October's over, I'm gonna do a big like physical media like episode again. I've done that before. I talked about when theaters were shutting down, the importance of going to a theater, going to a drive-in, compared to just everything being put video on demand and streaming. And I have that same opinion towards physical media as well. So yeah, that's definitely. But yeah, Talk to Me. Definitely gonna get a physical copy of that film. It was good. It really impressed me, and it's horror, so I'm gonna buy it anyways. Really, when we think about it, like Cobweb, as much as I think that fell apart in the third act, which I talked about in last week's episode, um, I still plan on getting a Blu-ray copy of that as well. Just much like most of the movies I'm going to be talking about today, I have physical copies of them. And those of you who message me, yes, I'm wearing my wedding ring. When I film, if I'm like go to work and I leave the apartment, I have the ring on, this and that, and then I'll have it on if I come home and like. But like if I have a day off and I'm relaxing, like, and I'm not going anywhere, most times I'm 10 times out of 10, I'm not like grabbing or about 9 times out of 10, I'm not grabbing my ring out of my case and putting it on. Someone pointed out, my friend's like, "Hey man, I watched your video. Like, you ain't wearing your wedding ring." I'm like, yeah, I was off that day. If I didn't have work that day, like, I just didn't put it on. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't leave. Do I got to advertise to my cats? Hey, cats, look what's happening. By the way, my cat's sleeping on her big 6 foot beanbag, and she hogs that thing, and she's so tiny. I just wanted to point that out. That's a sidebar because she looks cute, and she's just staring at me. Um, but yeah, so there. Other than that, TV shows like Chucky season was it 3 finally started. I'm really excited for that. Just finished binging season 2. Such a good show. It's such a smart and well written show. Like, and it's kind of funny the evolution of like horror being on TV, where like what they can get away with saying and showing, especially on like USA Network or Sci-Fi and this and that. And I'm like, but it's so smart. It's like it is a smart show. Like I saw a post or a tweet or whatever it's called now on Twitter or X or whatever, or Twix, or no, it's a candy bar. I don't like caramel, by the way. I'm just throwing it out there. And they were talking about, oh my god, Chucky, like the Chucky season is so woke and this and that. And I'm like, bro, have you never seen anything post Child's Play 3? Have you not seen what Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, Curse of Chucky? What's the other one? There was another one in between all those, isn't there? I forgot what it was called. And I was like, how are you guys like gonna say, like, have you not realized, like, especially if you watch Seed of Chucky, like, how are you gonna sit here and like say that Chucky went woke? I'm like, I was like, oh, bless your heart. You know what? Like, the South comes out of me one night though. And I was just like, man, like, let's see if my wife's actually texting me on. Telling her how, because she's out, and she's just like, how you feeling? I'm like, dude, I ate way too many jalapeno poppers. Like, I made, or not jalapeno poppers. What are the ones where, like, there's the jalapenos, like, have the cream cheese, and then they're, like, breaded and, like, fried. Okay, so I made, like, a bunch of those in my air fryer, and I ate, like, 15 of them. So I'm feeling it. That's what, but yeah, Chucky. There's like, it's woke, and it's, like, a horrible show to ruin. I was like, you obviously have never seen any of the more modern Chucky films. And it was stupid, but like, man, like, it's not even like, I guess their issues with it when they're talking about like the representation of that. I'm like, it's always been there, and it's not even like in the forefront that like is anything that's like taking away from the story and what's happening. It's like, bro, like, this is camp, this is cheesy, but it's good and well produced. And we keep getting Devon Sawa back as different characters because he keeps dying anyways. And I'm like, this is great. And their running gag between Devon Sawa and Chucky on social media is some of the best ways to promote that freaking show. I'm just saying. But yeah, I was like, man, and Chucky, it's so good. It's really good, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm mad, but not at the same time because the strikes were for an important reason. But I do believe the season is split, so they're doing like 4 episodes now for the new season, and there's going to be a break. And I guess next year, in the beginning of next year, at some point, we're going to get the second half of the season. But I was like, that's fine. I don't care because it's a good show. As long as it's not canceled, I don't freaking care. Don't you dare cancel Chucky. I need more seasons, okay? You can sit here and give me how many Walking Dead spin-offs do we have now? How many different shows? Like I'm actually trying to like there's a lot. So we got Daryl Dixon, we've got Fear the Walking Dead, we've got the man. Wow, there's so I can't even. I'm trying to like it's just listing all of them, but some of it's they're listing them like by how many seasons. I'm like, dude, no. Okay, there's a lot. There's basically a lot of Walking Dead seasons. Yet you want to they don't cancel Chucky. Hell, we got a lot of freaking American Horror Story. I don't need that many. Even though every season's different. Recent years they've been kind of lackluster, but you know that's for a different time. Uh, but yeah, I just Chucky's so good. It's one like I was so happy that came back, and then looking at everything else now, like the A24 looking into getting some bigger IPs, and you know everyone's shopping around for like Halloween as a series, and I'm like, when are we like what is going on? Are we gonna have like I already did the whole last year resurgence of mainstream horror, and then I just did an episode going over how great this year has been for horror films, and I was like, are we about to bring back horror television to the promised land? Because if we do that, I'm on board. Sign me up. Someone, someone hire me. I'll be an extra. You can. I'll do a different death every episode. Like we can find creative ways to have me play a character that dies very, very awkwardly. I'm okay with that. Trust me. Um, so let's see. So I'm torn when because I have two different lists because it was tough when I was trying to curate um a list of Stephen King films because there were a lot of stuff that was like television movies. And that was actually a majority of them before we even got like more like so when we got things like Cujo and Creep Show, Maximum Overdrive, Stand By Me, stuff like that, and like the early to mid '80s, those were obviously going in theaters. But then we had so many things going to television, like the original It with Tim Curry, which is phenomenal, was like a TV miniseries, but a film, and then you could buy it as a film. Same with The Stand and the Tommy Knockers, like the ones that I really liked. Those were TV, but series, but they were like early '90s. I didn't see them until like they were actually like on VHS on their own as stand like in a film format. Which, by the way, the earlier works in like the early '80s and '90s that were like TV miniseries, when you go back and watch them, you could tell they were made for TV because they do like the fade out that would be for like a commercial to play. And like I was watching the original It, and I was sitting there, I was like, it starts to, they say something, they look towards the camera, and it starts to fade out, and I'm like, oh, this is where the commercial would be. And it's a charm to that. There's like something about that because like I do like a lot of older films, even stuff from the '30s. If you follow me on social media, I was doing some posts about some different films from the '30s, like 34, like between 1934 and like 37. I was watching, and Stephen King had a lot of that. So I was trying to figure out like I'm gonna I'm gonna have everything organized between both forms of TV shows and the the actual movie releases, and then I'll probably kind of be like, okay, from a movie standpoint, these are my favorite like theatrical releases, and then here's my favorite TV show stuff because it wasn't because like primarily up until actually I don't want to jump around. Okay, let's go in chronological. The first Stephen King movie that was in theaters, like first movie, was Carrie. That came out 1976. Great film, still holds up. I think that might be in the running for one of the most remade Stephen King's uh, films, maybe, possibly. I'm not sure. I feel like it was. I feel like that one, because we had the sequel, and then there was one remake, and then there was another one that had Chloe, I forgot her name. She was Hit Girl, and I always forget. I always mess up full names like that when there's like a middle name and a last name. So, and then obviously, we had The Shining in 1980. Obviously, that one's been remade a lot, but I still feel like if we're going to talk about The Shining, it's my least favorite Stephen King film, but one of my favorite Stanley Kubrick films, if that makes sense. Because Stanley Kubrick, I mean, listen, a Kubrick film's not for everybody. Okay, we get it. I mean, I like some of like The Shining is probably one of my favorite. I'd also say Doctor Strangelove as well. Maybe Full Metal Jacket. Not really, that I'm iffy on. That's one of the ones I have to be in the mood to like, watch because and I could talk all day about, Stanley Kubrick stuff. Like I think a genius behind the camera. But when I talk about the book stuff, going back and like, checking out The Shining and everything else and then like what the movie was, I was like, okay. And even when I get later on in the list, because I am going in chronological order, and I'm not talking about everything, I'm not going over the whole filmography of Stephen King's video works. That is not happening. I do not have. That's going to be a really long video, and it would just be me rambling and being like, oh, I don't know about that, this and that. Just, The Shining is probably one of my least favorite Stephen King films, but it's one of my favorite Stanley Kubrick films. And so, and in between all that, we did get our first TV film one. So in '79, we got freaking Salem's Lot. I was trying to bring this up is because I was like, this is kind of cool. And I think from a vampire type genre, it was good. And also, I'd like to point out, it was really curious how in like the for the like 1979, and then obviously we didn't have a lot of networks like we do now. But the CBS was kind of like the network or the service, so to speak, that was like airing most of the freaking Stephen King little miniseries. Pretty cool, especially given how everything is now. I did like Salem's Lot. So I should say Carrie. I liked. I like Carrie. A lot of tropes in there: the high school, the prom, pig's blood, the pranks, bullying the girl, making it so she wins prom queen, stuff like that. There was a lot of those tropes in there, and it's funny for a Stephen King. Not funny, like I'm trying, like from an ironic standpoint, because I feel like when the '70s slashers were coming out, and we got things like Prom Night 2, Slumber Party Massacre, anything that had to do with like prom, high school, this and that. There's, or even high school in general, even college. There was always some sort of dance or prom, and I feel like Carrie went so much more because it was like there wasn't a serial killer, there wasn't a slasher. You had the overly religious mother that was overprotective and everything else, and I feel like that for its time was good. And even now, I'm still watching it, going back and watching it, and it's been what? How many years? It's been what, 47 years since that movie came out, and it's still good. It's it. I don't use this term a lot when I describe films. It is a timeless film. It really is. I think if you look at the whole video works of Stephen King, whether he wrote them or someone else adapted his books, Carrie is always going to be the one that's like, you could watch that. Like it aged well. I don't think it's one of the ones where people will look at it. Maybe someone will go watch it 10 years from now, or well, I mean, what, 3 years from now it'll be the 50th anniversary of that film. Damn, and be like, ugh, it's not that good. Can't work nowadays. No, Ken. If you watch the freaking newest remake that came out a couple of years ago about it, yeah, it could still work. It's still a good story. It still holds up. So I don't want to get too deep into like the Creep Show stuff because Creep Show 1, Creep Show 2. I talked about them on the horror anthology episode last year, so you can go back and check that out. I had a lot to say about my horror anthologies like that, and like Trick or Treat and VHS and stuff like that. But I will say I still stand my ground that Creep Show 1 and 2, and I didn't realize this when I was a kid or even younger watching them, that this was basically the best combination team ever because you had Stephen King and George Romero. Okay, like let that sink in. Just let it sink in. Let it sink in. I'm gonna wait for a second. Stephen King and George fucking Romero. That is like the superpowers. That is when like WWE had freaking Triple H and Stone Cold as a tag team. They were winning belts left and right, and they were just like dominating everyone. It's like when Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan finally shook their hands and became a team and the mega powers. Like that's basically what happens. You get if you give me in freaking 1982, and then we get a follow up in 5 years later, 1987, and we're like, hey, we heard you like Stephen King and Romero. Check out Creepshow and Creepshow 2. And it's like, son of a bitch. I'm in. Still to say, Creepshow 2, one of my favorite, all time favorite anthologies, even from a, like, um, even a movie, just movie standpoint. I really like the old Chief, Woodenhead. Like, I don't talk about it a lot because I don't like to bring race and anything. Being, part Native American, I didn't get a lot of Native American, content, you know, but there's something really cool about that story and like a respect and this and that, and it was really good. But also the fact that freaking wood carving was fucking dudes up. I liked it. I was like, man, this should get a whole ass movie. Give me a whole movie, Captain Woodenhead or Chief Woodenhead. Give me that movie. Then we can get the sequel, Revenge, the Woodening. You know, I don't think the Woodening would work. I'd watch it though. But yeah, like so, I don't want to dive too deep in Creepshow and Creepshow 2 because I've talked about it, but they were phenomenal. They still are. And a few honorable mentions that I'm not going to talk about. By the way, I'm not going to talk about the Dead Zone. I tried watching it. I have it, and it just didn't do it for me. I don't know why. Just I don't know. It just the whole. I know they made it into a TV show. I remember the TV show, right? And I'm a huge Christopher Walken fan. Okay, I am. But like, I just didn't really, from a movie standpoint, I really didn't like. I don't know, just didn't do it for me. Um, Same with Christine. It was movie. I haven't watched it that many times actually. I haven't watched it at all in recent years. I may have to revisit it because you know. Um, and also, it's really tough for me to talk about Children of the Corn because there's so many. Actually, I lied. Children of the Corn is the most remade, sequelized Stephen King story. There's so many. There's so many. And I feel like very rarely, if at all, because I'm looking now, I'm actually trying to pull up how many different, Children of the Corn there have been. And I really don't think any of them captured like the magic, so to speak, that the original one did in 1984. And it was just so good. And I've watched them like a majority of the remakes, and I've tried. I even watched one of the newer ones. I think that came out like last year. I think I bought it actually on Blu-ray. I don't know if I want to look for it or not. I kind of don't, but I kind of want to do because I know I have it. I think I did buy it actually, and it was all right. But in between, a lot of stuff just didn't work for that. Honestly, it really didn't. Um, and I also don't think Stephen King gets a lot of mm, I really think that a lot of people don't talk about the fact that, from a creature standpoint, that's not Stephen King has done a lot. Like I mentioned, Salem's Lot, which is vampires. You have Cujo, which is a very mean dog, technically. Uh, you have Silver Bullet, where he actually did werewolves. And I don't, I really don't remember fully. I know I've seen it. I think it's Cat's Eye, which has to do with like a stray cat or something in the city. I haven't really fully like watched watched it, in a while. It's been actually I think I've only seen it once. Um, but yeah, Silver Bullet was a really good, interesting take on werewolves. Uh, I'm a big sucker for like a good werewolf transformation, but this one was more entertaining because we had literally Corey Haim in it as the younger kid, but then we had Gary Busey. All right, that was that's all I remember. That's literally all I remember from that. I remember some of it. I wasn't gonna like overly research this because I knew if I sat down and I watched all these films, which I plan on doing anyways, I was gonna be this was gonna be like one of those like 2 hour long episodes where I'm like, and then this happened, and I don't want to. Like I said, I'm not going through his whole filmography. I'm just going through like the earlier works from like the 80s into the early 90s of the television ones, just to give you an idea, like in that time, like there was a lot of Stephen King stuff, and then it kind of like went through a lot of remakes and not as much of his newer stuff being made. Um, and I would be remiss to say and not bring up one of the best ones that actually came out the year I was born in 1986, Maximum Overdrive. Uh, because a lot of people realize so from a book standpoint, we'll talk about books for a second here before we Stephen King. I find it there's something nice about the fact that a good majority of his films were based off of his short stories, because when you have a full novel turned into one movie, you're gonna miss a lot of stuff. But to take a short story and turn it into a film, and depending on how long the short story is, you have that chance to either flesh out that short story or keep it as true to the words that are on the page as possible. And one of the cool things too is there was a time frame where Stephen King was not only the writer of his books and the short stories, he was actually writing the script treatment for it, or he was even directing it. Yes, Romero did, but like Maximum Overdrive, he directed as well, and I like it because I do like short stories more. Even though I like a lot of his novels, I think his novellas, where he has a collection of short stories, are really good. And Maximum Overdrive was one of those short stories from his Night Shift collection, and oof, so good. I like the idea of like one, there's a UFO, right? But it's not an alien thing. It's not about aliens. It's more or less when the aliens go by, all of a sudden, all anything that's like electronic or gas powered machines are just alive. And we had this cool tractor trailer truck that had like the hobgoblin or green goblin face on front of it, just stalking everyone. And I was like, how do you not? How is this not cool? I thought it was cool. I mean, I don't like trucks like that, but I mean, as a kid, I did. When you're like, I used to get the Hess trucks for a kid. You like like Hot Wheels and trucks and stuff when you're a kid. So I thought it was pretty cool. They were coming to life, and it's still one of my favorite. We had Emilio Estevez in it. Like, okay, um, and like another one that like okay, so only because this is new and fresh in my head, because I just watched Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. Obviously, Pet Cemetery came out in 1989. This film was basically good, and it's been remade a lot. There's been sequels. I don't like the sequel. The whole Pet Cemetery Part Two. Don't like it. Don't care. Even though it came back like years later, don't like it. Just don't like it. It's not a thing. Original Pet Cemetery. Then the remake. Oh, when did the remake come out? That was like what 3 years? Was it 2019, 2020? That one was good. I like that remake a lot, and you know how I feel about remakes, especially for horror films. There's very few that I'm like, ooh, that's really good. That one was really good, and I actually did like Bloodlines. That was actually a lot of fun. Pet Cemetery is one of the ones where it's like it's messed up, right? Right? Like, and I do appreciate, with the newer one, Bloodlines, explaining more of what the cemetery is there for, what's hidden past that wall of sticks and everything they made. And I did like that there was, oh, like I said, I don't make things about, but like I like when lore and folklore and Native American stuff is implemented in a good way, where it makes sense. And I did like that. Pet Cemetery is up there in my rankings for Stephen King stuff. Like I was gonna do a whole tier maker and like go over, but I was like, a lot of the tier makers I was looking at missed so much of his stuff. Like they didn't have Sometimes They Come Back. They didn't have the Tommy Knockers on there. They didn't have the Langoliers or what else? Rose Red, things like that. They didn't have those on there. They had Salem's Lot, Carrie, Creep Show, the normal, the usual ones that people know. Misery, which is, by the way, Misery is great. Um, I have not watched it a lot. Um, Kathy Bates is phenomenal in it. And James Caan, but it's one of the ones where it's like certain the way Stephen King writes, like that when it's a movie where there's like that tension building. Are they gonna escape? Are they gonna what's gonna happen, or what's this mystery? That tension, that build up, after you see the film, you don't get the same tension and like anxiousness watching it ever again. You can't replicate that. So there's some movies, while they're great and I can rewatch them, I don't feel the same watching it again or on even down the road. I may be able to pick up on more context clues and foreshadowing, but it just doesn't feel the same. Like Misery is one of those things as well. Same with the Tommy Knockers or the Langoliers. It's like, what's going on here? What is all this? What's going on with them? They're on a plane and now no one's around. What did they fly through? What is going on? And then it's like, once you figure it out, and then it's like, well, you watching it, it's not the same. Those things like The Stand, I can watch The Stand over and over again. I like The Stand so much. Although The Stand recently, I finally, because it's been so long, I finally was like, I'm just gonna listen to the audiobook for that. Um, it there I didn't watch the newer I know what year was it? I think they just did The Stand as a limited series. Uh yeah, in 2020. I did not check that out yet. It's been on my watch list. I keep saying I'm gonna watch it and I don't. And um it's kind of funny because there was a lot of early 90s Stephen King stuff, and I never because I never really, as a kid, because mind you, I was born in 1986, so I'm watching some of the stuff as like 10, 11 years old and stuff like that. And I'm not putting two and together, and I didn't really start reading Stephen King probably till around like 2000 when I was like 14 or 15. And I really didn't put two and two together until 2003. Or was it 2002? I think it was 2002. Um, I was I really, really, really wanted Dreamcatcher when that novel came out. I was like, I need it. Like this is a book I need. This thing was thick. I still have it somewhere on one of my bookshelves, and I'm like, so I'm reading. And my grandmother at the time, my late grandmother, she was just like, all right, you want the book? Like, I'll get you the book. I'm like, cool, because you know, I'm a kid. Just got my first job, got my first cell phone, had to pay my own stuff for like things like that, like anything fun, like video games, this and that. That's what my work money went to. Save some up also. And so she gets me the book. And she's like, all right, but I want to read it, so you need to read it fast. I'm like, all right. Because she loves Stephen King. And so I kid you not, I read this book in like 5 days, 5, 6 days. Went to school, came home, read the book until I went to sleep. Woke up, went to school, read the book, you know? And it was so good. And it's one of those Stephen King things where it's like you don't realize like by the time you get through it, you're like aliens. So it's not just a creature. This is alien related. And then you get all the flashbacks to them as kids and everything else. And I'm like, you're getting like it vibes from it. And I liked that storytelling. But up until then, it never really clicked in my head that like this is when I really started getting into the Stephen King books more, because I didn't really start like I read a few Stephen King books here and there, as a kid. Um, but this is like maybe when I was like 11 or 12, So now at this point, I'm 15, and then I'm starting to click in my head these horror movies I was watching: The Shining, Thinner, you know, uh, Langoliers, Graveyard Shift, Running Man. Even these films are Stephen King, and I'm like, oh, because the internet like isn't was barely a thing, and I didn't know. I'm not paying attention to who the movies are, like created by. Like, if you thought at this time I knew who Romero is, or if who I knew who Stephen King, I know who Stephen King was from an author standpoint. If you think I knew all these directors of things, like Tim Burton from '89 Batman, no, I was like, I just want to see Batman. You know, that's how it was. The only name I knew was George Lucas because of Star Wars. You couldn't ask me, hey, who directed a Star Trek film? I'd be like, who directed Batman? I wouldn't know. I would not know the answers to that. Even now, there's some movies where I'm like, I don't know. Am I supposed to know who directed it? And I don't pay attention to that. So it was around 2002, 2003. This is when I was like, he's on my radar now. Now I'm a Stephen King fan. I'm getting towards my sophomore, junior high school. And then we get the Dreamcatcher film my junior year. And I'm like, oh. And I was so happy, strictly from the standpoint of I was finally 17, so I could go see it without an adult. Usually it would be my aunt or my mom. They liked horror movies and sci-fi movies, so they would take me to go see it. So now I was like, I can go see a rated R movie by myself. Me and my friends went to go see it, and I'm like, yeah. And one of my friends was like, this looks really good. I'm like, yeah, I read the book. And by the time this movie came out, I already read the book twice, and I've read it a few times since then. I really like it. And it led into more stuff because now we're starting to get, and I feel like Dreamcatcher really like. Okay, so I was a big fan of Kevin Smith films, so obviously seeing Jason Lee in it, that was obviously for me. I was like, yeah, this is a no brainer. Like he's one of my favorite actors at the time. Mallrats and Jay and Silent Bob and stuff. So I was like, yeah, obviously it's Jason Lee. I'm like, what? He's in this? This is cool. And I feel like we were starting to get really like some mainstream again because there's even was mainstream, but not like to the point where it's like I feel like it was, or maybe I just didn't notice it as a kid. But then we got Secret Window with Johnny Depp, and then next thing you know, we're getting 1408, The Mist. We're getting Bag of Bones, which listen, I'm not even gonna talk about Bag of Bones right now because I got to talk about the book too. Then um, there's some in between stuff like Riding the Bullet and Desperation. Like, man, that's fine. The Mist, I think 1408 and The Mist that one year, because I think they both, yeah, no, let me see. Yeah, they both came out the same year in 2007. So Dreamcatcher, by the way, I just want to say this real quick. I was really upset they changed the ending to Dreamcatcher for the film. Um, I thought the book and everything else like ended it so good, but I was really happy um, that on the DVD and Blu-ray we had the alternate ending that was closer to the book and how that was. That made me really happy, because I was really upset. I was actually genuinely upset that they changed the ending, and I was like, "What? No!" I was like, "No, they changed the ending. This is bad. Give me back my good ending." Um, but that 2007 though with freaking 1408 and The Mist, that's those were that was such those two films. 1408, very weird. And a lot of people like. I really enjoyed it for what it was. I could see how people went, but The Mist, like that ending, caught me off guard, and I was like, "You got to be kidding!" And it was such a good, like, acted film. I like when there's something isolated, like, and that's the cool thing I think I like the most about Stephen King. Whether it's, what's the one with the storm? I don't think did that even get a. I always forget the name of it. There's a lot of movies he's done and books even where it's just like, oh, you know, either the town itself or there's a group of people that are kind of isolated and they have to kind of, figure out what's going on around them, figure out what these things are. Like, and I like that. I liked when that happens and you get more characters. Yes, you can hear the noises out there. There's monsters. Not bad. But then at the same time, You've got the 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 relationship and the dynamic between the people, you know, the tension. Then you get the few people that are just getting cabin fever and going a little stir crazy, and it's like now everyone has to deal with that, and it's like that is, mm, it's so good, and I feel like maybe it's not talked about a lot because I don't think we get that as much as Storm of the Century. There it is. I remembered because I'm old. I don't feel like we get a lot of that anymore. If that makes sense. Like I feel like we don't get this. You know, everything's a lot of flash in the pan, jump scares, and this and that. We don't get that build of the tension. Like you don't know what's out there, and then you get the one person's like, "Ah, oh, it looks safe. I don't see anything," and they run out there, and next, they're snatched up. And then you get the few people that are like one of my favorite things about the Mist is you had a few people that started to find religion and finding something to believe in, some having faith in something that could stop all this, and then they turn into like a little bit of a crazy cult group, and then they start sacrificing people. It happens, but I liked there were so many different interpersonal like things going on there, and that was it. And then we had kind of like a little low for Stephen King, like we had Bag of Bones, but really the next time that's one of the more recent ones. Not really recent because it's been like freaking almost it's been like 10 years. I liked Under the Dome. I liked the novel. I was I was weary when it was announced as a TV show. There were some changes. The TV show was all right for what it was, but the book is so good for Under the Dome. If you haven't already, please go check out that novel. It's so good, so good. But I guess we could talk about some of like the remake stuff because after this, it's a lot of remakes, except for the sequel to The Shining, Doctor Sleep. I thought that was a pretty interesting book. There's a lot going on there. Um, the movie with Ewan McGregor was visually appealing. I thought there's some cool elements to it. Not my cup of tea, like I said. The Shining, um, not one of my favorite Stephen King stories. One of my favorite Kubrick movies. So Doctor Sleep, it was all right. I do. Actually, no. I'm gonna go over one more, and then everything else we're gonna go over is going to be remakes. So, The Outsider, that book was so good. I have not finished the series though. I had hope for it. I watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes, and I was like, I'll get to it when I get to it. And then it's been how long has it been? It's been like 3 years, and I haven't even like touched the show. And there's been a few misses also along the way. Like In the Tall Grass did not really do anything for me. So I you know, I just couldn't do it. It wasn't working for me. But yeah, that's it. Now on to remakes. We got a good amount. I don't consider obviously Pet Cemetery Bloodlines is not a remake. I feel like that's a prequel to the original one because it is. The main one we got, obviously, that made a lot of money and is getting a prequel and this and that is It, because we got Part One, The Losers Club, then we got It Chapter Two. I didn't even know they called the first one It Part One, The Losers Club. I actually didn't know that. I knew the second was called It Chapter Two. I just didn't know that was actually. Why wouldn't they call just It Chapter One then? Because it's kind of weird to call one Part One and then the next one Chapter Two instead of Part Two. I'm just saying. I'm just spitballing here. It's kind of confusing. Not just me. Everyone else. Confusing. Confusing for you. How about you? The cat meowed. Nice. Too bad my mic won't pick it up because I have the the setups going right in here. Um, but yeah, I think that's like the big one. We did get obviously, like I said, we had a Carrie remake, which did very well. And then we also had um another version of The Stand as a show. And I'm trying to think what's the other one we got. Well, we got Firestarter. Not a lot of people talk about Firestarter, honestly. Because I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I think because it had a theatrical release, but it was also put on Peacock at the same time. So I don't know if that. I feel like that might have hurt it because I didn't see anyone talking about it when it came out. Um, I saw a lot of advertisement for it. Um, and then I just realized Salem's Lot got a release this year, and I have not heard anything about that. And that was like back in April. So I'm gonna have to look that up because I know more recently the Boogeyman had come out, and I was planning on checking that out recently because I do believe it is now on some streaming services. But yeah, man, and I know you're thinking before I go into anything else. Like there are some ones that I mentioned in the name, but didn't really talk about, like Riding the Bullet. I didn't talk about Thinner. I didn't talk about The Night Flyer. Um, I didn't talk about The Shawshank Redemption because I don't really. That's like not like a horror. Like we're going into his horror stuff because like The Green Mile also he wrote and Stand by Me. Stand by Me was ensemble cast of a lot of young actors who grew up to be in like major Hollywood films, when you think about it. But this is more of the horror side of things, the thrillers. And I think Stephen King was not a stepping stone because I don't know, because Goosebumps were the gateway. Stephen King wasn't the stepping stone, so to speak, to me getting into other authors. Because obviously I've read Stephen King before I got into like Edgar Allan Poe or H.P. Lovecraft or even Michael Crichton stuff. Uh, but I think that it was definitely pivotal in steering the ship to navigate those waters. And I'm sorry, I'm still trying to figure out what that book was that I got. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to figure it out. It's really gonna bother me. It's like it was something. It was something, and I don't know what it was. It was like a kid with a rabbit on the cover. It's gonna bother me. It's gonna bother me. If I figure out what it is before I start editing this episode, there will be a jump cut to me being like, "I figured it out," and then we'll all be happy. But yeah, I think Stephen King was definitely steering the ship of me navigating into horror. His films, when you look at the list just from the 80s and 90s alone, like I I'm hard pressed to say, like I don't even know if I would be like reading as much as I am even now for like horror books and novellas. I don't think, most of my favorite movies and franchises and stories are Stephen King. Like, and I listen to podcasts like the King Cast and this and that. Like, I love like all the works of Stephen King. There's like when I say things aren't my favorite, it's not I don't hate them. It's just when you look at the whole everything he has created, like they just rank lower than others. But I don't think there's any story genuinely that he has created that I hate. I don't think I hate any of them. And um, yeah, it's it's just it's just I figured it out. It's called Satan Spawn, and it's written by Richard J. Silverthorne. That book, that book, that book right there. I'm gonna try and see what we can find it. There we go. Really, it's a rare book. I didn't know that. I still got two copies because I started the other one started to get a little damaged. But yeah, that book is was messed up, and I remember reading that as a freaking kid, and it was like a book, and I think it was. I'm looking at it right now. I think that book was published by Avon, which was like where like someone's you know mom or aunt would go around and be like, "Here's your Avon catalog. What do you want to buy?" And it's like, mm. Yeah, this book is like $30 something. Wow, I didn't know that. That's not a copy, so I'm okay with that. But yeah, it's that was a fucked up book, honestly. It just popped in my head. I was like, yeah, I figured out the book finally. Okay, now I can stop thinking about it because that's why there's been like a delay. Like I'm like trying to think about it while I'm trying to record, and I'm like, what was it called? I don't know. But yeah, say it's fun. So, but yeah, Stephen, I very few like like I say like the Romeros, Stephen King. You got Sam Raimi. Like especially like there's so many like people have done horror, have done things iconically in that genre and that field, and mm, I could go on literally for days talking about Stephen King with someone, and I have. Like, I feel like my wife probably finds it annoying because I'll be like, "Hey, we'll watch like a Stephen King film," and then I'm like, "Well, did you know in the book, or did you know this, and did you know he also wrote this, and how he came up with the ideas for that, and did you notice these these tropes that are Stephen King tropes?" And she'll be like, "I'm watching a movie," and I'm like, "I'm sorry." I didn't mean to. I get excited when I get to talk about Stephen King stuff and watch Stephen King stuff. Um, Easily one of my favorite authors of all time. Easily, probably easily in the top three, 100%. Like it's not even close. Uh, like yeah, but yeah, that's Stephen King stuff. Hey, if you are like, what's your favorite Stephen King film and what's your favorite Stephen King book? Because I know I said I was going to talk about books, but I'm already like 50 minutes into this episode, and I want to give you guys long ass episodes like 2 weeks in a row. I get it. Like it can be tiring listening to one person ramble. That's why I usually try and keep them shorter. But it's like when I go on tangents, when I start talking about like, it's not even that. Like sometimes I'll have topics as that, and I'm wary of the time. But when I'm like last week, I got to talk about the movies of 2023, or this week I'm talking about Stephen King. I do not even know what time it is right now. I actually had the video screen recording minimized so I don't look at the timer to see how long I've been talking for because I don't want to rush myself on these. Also, if you haven't already, go look up Sometimes They Come Back. I know I didn't talk about it much, but that one is actually a really good one. I also thought it was cool because, it took place in Connecticut. That's where I grew up. And it didn't take up not too far. Like, well, not far, but like I knew the town that was area that they were trying to go for. But yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, I thank you guys for watching and listening. If you're listening, I noticed increase in audio listeners. Thank you guys for returning. And because I know I took a break, and when you take a break, you kind of like are removed from the feed, And I know from a podcast standpoint, if you don't actually upload for too long, I feel like it auto subscribes on certain platforms. I know Apple Podcast does that. If I don't listen to an episode of a show for a certain amount of time, it just removes it from my feed. That as if I never subscribed to it. Which is why I'm telling everyone, if you're listening to this, go right on ahead and go. If you have Spotify, just go subscribe over there. Go follow the podcast over there on Spotify. Because I do host everything through Spotify, I have more ways to interact with the audio listeners. So if you guys want to, go over there, hit a little follow button, a little subscribe button, leave a little review, and I can do polls and Q&As and everything else over there, and I want to start doing that because I think that'd be a lot of fun. But for those of you watching on YouTube, hey, how's it going? Name's Mark. Right, no, yeah, you already know that. You've been watching me. Um, if you haven't and you're watching this, you haven't. If you right, let me try this again. If you're watching this and you haven't actually subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Uh, I don't do the horror podcasts all the time. Just because I don't know. I just don't. like I like doing like a more broad niche stuff about all the nerdy things, and I do interject my horror love into there. So yeah, if you haven't, go check. Please hit the subscribe button. And comment below. What is your favorite Stephen King movie or book? Because I started to say that, and then I realized I didn't talk much about books, and then I went on a tangent on how long the podcast was, and then I wasted more time talking about it. Very on brand for me, by the way. It happens. But that's it. This is episode 151 or 152. I have not decided yet because I'm putting 2 episodes out this week. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. And before I go, because I mentioned Goosebumps, friend Squall Charleston released a book. We got my camera autofocus called Terror Valley: School's Out for Never. First book in the new series. Actually, the first book of the new series. It's not like he has another series, but debut as an author. I read it, left a review, loved it. Quick, easy read. If you grew up reading Goosebumps, you'll have the nostalgia kick reading that, and it's good for your children as well if you have them or yourself. I don't have kids, and I bought it. I bought it digitally. I didn't know there was gonna be a physical edition. That went to leave my review on Kindle, and then I was like, "Oh, there's a physical edition." And then I hit buy it now, and there's like, "Oh, we'll see you in 2 days, and you'll get it delivered." And I'm like, "All right, cool, thank you, Amazon." But yeah, go check that out. Terror Valley: School's Out for Never. Check my Twitter or my X. I retweeted that stuff so you can see them there. That being said, this has been episode 151/152 because I haven't decided yet of a Nerd Named Mark podcast. Whew. The podcast is available on all podcasting platforms. You make sure you just type in a Nerd Named Mark because I do all this stuff. I got a link tree thing and it shows all those things, and I'm short-winded. I'm getting old. Thank you guys for listening. I thank you guys for watching. My name is Mark, and I'm a nerd.